Welcome, everyone. The webinar will begin at the top of the hour and will be recorded. Connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. We ask that you share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. So please use the hashtags, #GLReading and #LearningTuesdays to tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's conversation, and we'll be sure to retweet it. Once again, connect with the campaign on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. The webinar will begin shortly, and it will be recorded and shared with you afterwards.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this GLR Learning Tuesday on ways that places and spaces can be used to foster children's learning. My name is Jill Fioravanti. I'm a senior consultant to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and I could not be more thrilled to be able to be the facilitator and the moderator for today's GLR Learning Tuesday. To provide a little bit of context, children spend 80%, and clearly now much more than that, outside of the school environment for their time. And there's just tremendous potential in leveraging this out of school time and the places and spaces where kids are to support children's development and engaging parents, caregivers, and family in that process of supporting their child's development. This is even now more important, as I said before, than before, given the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that that's had on school closure and on how all of us look differently at place and space. So what you'll see today is going to be inspiring, exciting, and it's going to show you how places and spaces can be defined in a variety of ways, and how the look and feel of those places and spaces can really be shaped to provide learning opportunities for young kids. I come to this work from an affordable housing and a community development background, so I've always kind of been thinking about space in that way, but the work of Too Small to Fail, Playful Learning Landscapes, and the Brookings Institution has just really opened my eyes to how you can use physical assets and the environment and space around you to support early school success outcomes for kids. What you'll also see in the discussion today is how partnerships can be leveraged in new and exciting and unique ways to foster early school success for children and foster learning for kids and their families. And lastly, one of the things we hope you hear today is the ways that research and practice are interrelated and connected to make the case for investments in programs and in installations and in work such as this, and how that research and practice can be brought together to measure the impact of this work, and then how that can be used to inform future decisions on programs and funding. You can go to the housekeeping details. We are live streaming this to Facebook. We're also recording it, and we're going to be sending out the recording along with several resources when we're done with this conversation and within the next few days. We really encourage you to both introduce yourself in the chat box, thanks to all of those who have done that, with your name and your organization, to all panelists and attendees so others can see who's on the line. And to put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We are really trying to make this as engaging as possible, and we have some different ways we're going to be doing that over the course of the 90 minutes. And you are on listen only mode, though we are going to be trying to get a few other voices in the room when we get to the Q&A portion. So please put your question in and we'll try to call on a few folks as we go throughout the 90 minutes. You can go to the next slide. So for those of you who are new to GLR Learning Tuesdays, GLR Learning Tuesdays is every Tuesday from 3 to 4:30. We've had about 40 GLR Learning Tuesdays since we launched this in September of 2019. And they're on a variety of different topics. You can see some of the ones that are coming up right now in late July through early August and into the rest of August. We really encourage you to sign up for future GLR Learning Tuesdays and participate with us in our regular time together at this time block. You can go to the next slide. We also just recently launched a Funder to Funder webinar series. 2 of them have happened already. We have one more coming up next Tuesday from 12:30 to 2 Eastern. And this one is focusing on the early childhood workforce. So if you are a funder on the line, and that could be a community foundation, a United Way, a local foundation, a family foundation, national, state, public, private, you name it, please join us in these funder to funder conversations. These really build off of the listening tour that took place in 2018 that we had with our coalitions and communities around the country, where people that we spoke to who represented the funding community were really craving an opportunity to have candid and honest and open dialogue with other funders about some of the trends in investments and some of the roles that funders can really have in to play in supporting early school success outcomes for kids and their families. So we really encourage you to take advantage of this series, and we'll be continuing to offer funder to funder series in the future as well. You can go to the next slide. So for today, we are going to be starting off in a minute with a fun little introductory activity. And then I'm going to be turning it over to our 3 featured presentations and discussants. First is going to be Helen Hadani with the Brookings Institution. She's going to provide kind of a macro why around this work. Why is the working with informal places and spaces to support early child development so important? And she'll be pulling in some of the research from the Brookings Institution and how the Brookings Institution, through a couple of their different centers, looks at the rationale and the research behind this topic. And then we're going to hear from 2 organizations, 2 efforts, Playful Learning Landscapes. Brenna Hasinger-Das will be speaking on behalf of PLL about the great work that they have going all over the world, and particularly in their local area of Philadelphia, as well as other places. And then Jane Park-Wu with Too Small to Fail will be talking about Too Small to Fail's work all around the country, working with a variety of different partners to infuse learning into informal place and space. And as we've been talking in our prep work for, this is one of the most beautiful decks of slides I think you'll see. It's going to really just connect to all the senses in terms of the value and the way in which you can really reach kids. So we're really excited to be able to lift up the work that all these great organizations are doing. We're then going to be wanting to hear from you. We'll have some time for Q&A, and we're going to have a little fun exercise that we're going to do via Zoom in the latter part of the call, where we're going to want to get some of your brainstorming and your thinking, and then we'll have some closing thoughts. So you can go to the next slide. So let's put a question out there before we hop into it. Introductory question. So please use the chat and use the responding to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your thoughts on this. What is your earliest memory of talking, reading, singing, or playing as a child? So we're going to take about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, get your thoughts in the chat, and I'll read out a few of these as we go. So please, please weigh in. We'd love to see your thoughts. Dick and Jane books. Let's see some more. Reading books on my mother's lap, Harry Potter, reading Cinderella at bedtime with my mom, Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, singing at church. My mom sang to us, cloth books, being in the car with my mom, singing in the car on vacation, learning English as a second language, another Dick and Jane book, going to the library with my dad, reading to me under the big tree in my backyard, my parents reading The Hobbit before bed, 1 chapter at a time. I love that. My mom's lullabies in Spanish, trying to read the newspaper, nighttime bed stories, sitting under our living room table listening to audiobooks and following along with my mom. Word games in the car. Good. We did a lot of singing. These are great. These are great. I wish I could read all of them. a lot of cars, libraries, at home with your loved ones, backyard treehouse. This is good. Good. We'll keep adding them in. And I think this will give our panelists a lot of good sense as to some of the ways all of you have learned as kids. Let's go to the next slide. So our featured speakers, again, could not be more happy to be able to be with this just distinguished group of people. Their bios and the PowerPoint deck was sent to you as a registrant this morning. And it's available on CLIP, which is the Community Learning for Impact and Improvement platform. That's the Campaigns Network Learning platform. We'll also provide links to that in the chat box, and we'll be emailing them out after in our post-webinar resources as well. We're going to start, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to start with Helen Hadani, a fellow with the Brookings Institution. She can wave to you. Hi, Helen. She is a fellow with the Global Economy in Global Economy and Development with the Center for Universal Education, and also a fellow with the Metropolitan Policy Program, the Ann T. and Robert M. Bass Center for Transformative Placemaking with the Brookings Institution. So she's really looking at this work from a dual lens, and which is really exciting. And she's going to provide some initial commentary on kind of the why behind informal place and space, and how it can be used to foster child development and learning. And from there, we'll go into Brenna and Jane. So I'll turn it over to Helen.
Thanks, Jill. So as Jill mentioned, I'm representing the Brookings Institution. Good afternoon, everybody. So while I do work in DC, I'm calling in today from my home in California. Next slide, please. So I'm here to provide some sort of broader context around why it's so important, especially right now in the midst of this pandemic, to think about learning in public spaces and informal learning outside of school contexts. So here you see some projected learning outcomes by 2030. Experts predicting that by the year 2030, which is now crazy enough, only 10 years away, over half of the world's youth, that's over 800 million young people, will not have the skills that they need to succeed in work and their future careers. Next slide, please. And so what this means for high income countries like the United States is that we are failing about 1/3 of our children. We know that economic disparities among families lead to very large gaps in educational outcomes and achievement gaps between cognitive and social skills of middle income children and then their peers living in under-resourced areas emerge as early as age 3. And then that sets the path or trajectory leading children from under-resourced and marginalized communities to poor academic performance. Next slide, please. So we also know that there are some racial and ethnic disparities that persist among children living in very high poverty neighborhoods. So as you see from this graph, the percentages are very high for African American, American Indian, and Latino children living in these high poverty neighborhoods, which are scattered throughout the United States. And we know that quality child caregiver interactions are one of the most important factors for healthy early development. But families experiencing poverty unfortunately have fewer opportunities to engage in these healthy quality interactions. We also know that low resourced environments often have very low quality public infrastructure and public spaces. And so children and families living in these areas have very limited access to nurturing and enriching learning environments, both formal and informal, including museums and libraries. Next slide, please. So organizations like the World Bank are now thinking about learning losses due to COVID. And so this chart shows one possible scenario of how the learning curve may evolve. So what you see, the black line is pre COVID. So this is the sort of standard distribution of children's learning outcomes with children below 300. So that's to the left of the red vertical line, behind grade level. So scores under 300 are not meeting proficiency for reading. And so you see there's a little gray area there, which is not what we want to see. But what's most worrisome now with COVID is that the purple dotted line, that's a widening of the distribution of children's learning with many, many more children left behind. And most of those children are likely to be living in very poor areas, very under-resourced and marginalized communities. So what we're now worried about is that purple area, because wealthier families are much sort of better situated to mitigate COVID's effects when it comes to what's happening now, which is a large portion of children doing distance learning. So wealthier families live in more comfortable homes, they have better internet connections, they have resources to pay for tutors, and that's not the case most of the time for children living in very poor areas. And so COVID makes it even more apparent and I think more urgent to think about learning opportunities, enriching learning opportunities in everyday environments that are accessible to all children and families. Next slide, please. So what we would like to see, or what's sort of aspirational, is what you see in the graph on the right. And so here we want to see that there are, all children are on the right of the 300. So we want to see children all performing at proficiency, but also we want to see that these children are sort of have less of a flat curve so that we don't see so many of them falling behind. Right? We want them all to be proficient, and also in the long term, we want much more equitable and broad learning outcomes for all children. Next slide, please. So one possible and powerful solution for providing learning opportunities in the public space is playful learning landscapes. And I'm going to talk about this this concept at a very high level because Brenna is going to really talk about more of the details and the research because she has led much of this research in her work. But playful learning landscapes provides fun, interactive installations co-located at spaces where families frequent. So places like supermarkets, laundromats, public parks, bus stops. And the playful learning landscapes encourages critical connections and the development of skills, allowing children from under-resourced neighborhoods to enter formal school on a much more level playing field and then continue to thrive in school and beyond. Next slide, please. So while there's no silver bullet for educational inequity, Playful Learning Landscapes offers a powerful solution with a wide range of outcomes. So from a child development perspective, Playful Learning Landscapes enables a mind shift around the importance of caregiver-child interactions and playful learning as a foundation for early learning among caregivers and communities. At the same time, Playful Learning Landscapes make cities more beautiful and more livable for their residents, and also engages communities around revitalization of the public realm. For example, Brenna's going to talk about the transformation of a vacant lot next to a bus stop. And it also creates opportunities for very important social interactions and engagements among adults and children alike. Next slide, please. So at Brookings, the Playful Learning Landscapes Initiative is a joint venture between two centers, the Center for Universal Education and the Robert and Ann Bass Center for Transformative Placemaking. So working at the intersection of both centers, I am leading this initiative and bringing together an interdisciplinary group of scholars and practitioners to think about how to transform everyday spaces into powerful learning opportunities for children and families. Next slide, please. So we find ourselves at a really exciting opportunity and moment as there's growing evidence and local experiences contributing to the playful learning field, as we're going to hear shortly from both Brenna and Jane. And one recent contribution from the Brookings Institution is a report titled Philadelphia Playful Learning Landscapes, Strategies for a Playful Learning Movement, written by my colleague and senior fellow at the Center for Universal Education, Jenny Proman Robinson. So as part of the post-webinar resources and materials, you'll be receiving a link to this report, which is on the Brookings website. So with Philadelphia serving as a demonstration site, the report documents efforts to scale playful learning landscapes, installations, and activities, and offers lessons learned to inform further expansion in Philadelphia and also adoption by other cities and other countries around the world. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna wrap up with telling you just very quickly about a new initiative at the Brookings Institution to advance playful learning landscapes, to advance the mission of playful learning landscapes. And this is developing a new peer learning network and resource sharing platform for cities interested in adopting and scaling playful learning landscapes to foster early childhood development. So the Playful Learning Landscape City Network, as we're calling it right now, will bring together local decision makers and stakeholders across the United States and globally to learn from one another about how to leverage evidence to develop contextualized, place-based learning environments. So through the network, Brookings hopes to, one, connect interested actors, including civic society leaders, city government officials, and urban planners, through in-person and virtual meetings to build a growing community of practice to address the key challenges of adopting and scaling playful learning landscapes. Secondly, to host a series of webinars in collaboration with leading experts on playful learning and placemaking to elevate evidence and proven effective strategies for identifying and adopting playful learning in everyday spaces. And thirdly, to create an online resource hub that will provide access to curated content on emerging approaches and best practices on designing, implementing, and maintaining playful learning landscapes, activities, and installations. Next slide. So I just wanted to end with a reminder of, I think, our collective goal of transforming cities to support all of their citizens, young, old, and everybody in between. Children are a kind of indicator species. If we can build a successful city for all children, we will have a successful city for all people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen. I think you can see through Helen's work and through her conversation and what she shared with you, both the research behind this, and we're going to quickly get into the practice and how this can look and feel and actually be implemented. And also the importance of this before and even more so now. This is a really, really exciting topic and extremely interdisciplinary. I think having Helen be able to provide some commentary to kick us off really gives us that context. So Helen, I really want to thank you. Just a couple quick things I'll note. There's a couple questions that have been put in the Q&A box. Helen, you may even be able to answer some of those in writing. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can as we go through the time. Keep adding them. We also are going to have a really strong post-webinar resource material suite of things to send to all of you. So be on the lookout for that in the next few days, including, as Helen said, that report and some other reports and videos and visuals that I think are going to be really relevant to many of you. So just want to call that out. All right, so let's go to the next slide. I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Brenna Hasinger-Das, Assistant Professor with Psychology in the Psychology Department at Pace University. Brenna examines children's play and learning in homeschool and community contexts, particularly for children experiencing poverty. She has an area of expertise in STEM, and she's very interested in investigating the role of play and games for learning. So you can see why Playful Learning Landscapes is right up her alley. So I'm pleased to turn it over to Brenna, and get ready for your eyes to be blown. These are some really exciting and great visuals that you're about to see from Brenna and Jane. So I'll turn it over to Brenna.
Thanks, Jill, and thanks, Helen, for giving kind of an overview of some information about Playful Learning Landscape so far. Like Jill said, I'm Brenna Hassinger-Doss. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm an assistant professor at Pace, but I'm also a science advisor to Playful Learning Landscapes and have been working on this initiative since it started. Next slide. So we heard a little bit about this already, but I wanted to say again quickly that why Playful Learning Landscapes? Why did we begin this whole initiative? And it really came around thinking about where are kids spending most of their time. And in Western countries, in general, kids spend about 20% of their waking time in school, and the other 80% not in school. So where are kids when they're not in school? They're at home, they're in community settings, they're, you know, in all kinds of different places. So we really thought, okay, you know, a lot of work that's gone into, you know, improving academic and other outcomes for children has focused on schools. But if kids are spending so much time out of schools, where else could we target some of our work? So we thought a lot about this, and that's how Playful Learning Landscapes came about. We thought, how can we use kind of everyday places and spaces and transform them into places where we can foster learning and caregiver-child engagement? Next slide. So through Playful Learning Landscapes initiative, we've developed ways to spur playful learning, but also physical activity and caregiver-child interaction in these kind of everyday places and spaces. And I'm going to show you in a minute what some of that looks like. And then also we've worked a lot to partner with cities, communities, and families to make this happen. Next slide. So in working with, we also work a lot with architects and designers to create physical spaces. And these design principles come from Itai Palti, who is one of our you know, main architects who's been involved in this process. And this is kind of how we start thinking about creating these projects. So I want to lay this out for you so you can see how we're thinking even before we start working with a community to design a project. So the first is that Playful Learning Landscapes designs are integrated, so they fit into the area in which they're in. So they don't kind of, you know, they kind of make intuitive sense where they're at, and they fit into the area where they're being placed. That second one is that they're intriguing. So if it's a, you know, a physical design and you're walking down the street, you see it, we want it to catch people's attention and they say, ooh, what is that? I need to go check that out because just that looks really interesting. The third is that they need to be intuitive. So this really speaks to the idea that we have folks from multiple language backgrounds who might be using our designs. So we want to create a lot of designs that don't require a lot of you know, language or signage to understand how to use them. So we want the designs to be intuitive within themselves, that you can figure out how to do it without someone telling you. And then finally, that these designs are interactive. So that means also like within themselves. So the design itself you can interact with, but also that they foster interactions between caregivers and children, and also children with other children. Okay, next slide. So this is just a model that we use to kind of explain how we work with communities on various Playful Learning Landscapes projects, and I'll tell you a little bit more about specific examples of this in a minute. But you can see community is centered in the middle. We have all different kinds of groups, from community leaders, local registered community organizations working with children, parents, faith groups, etc. And then you can see we have this iterative process. So the idea is, you know, co-designing, working with community members and community groups to create projects from the very beginning, to implementing them alongside community members, also alongside governments or businesses, etc. And then evaluating them alongside the community. And you'll hear more about what that has looked like in a little bit when I talk about some of the specific projects. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to get into some examples of these kinds of projects. So one of the earliest projects that we did under this kind of playful learning landscapes umbrella was what we term supermarket speak. And basically this was done in Philadelphia, partnering with supermarkets to transform them almost into children's museum type environments. So the first iteration of this project only cost about $60 to implement. It had signs that were put up in grocery stores, and you can see an example of a sign in a picture here. It says, "I'm a red delicious apple. Can you find other kinds of apples?" And what happened in this study is the signs went up. Well, first we looked before the signs went up to see how caregivers and children are talking to each other and interacting. Then we look after the signs go up and compare and see, you know, did the signs encourage more interaction, engagement? And what we found was that in supermarkets that primarily served families experiencing poverty, we saw a 33% increase in the amount of interaction. It stayed fairly similar in stores that primarily served folks from middle or high income backgrounds. But we thought that, you know, this was really interesting because it was such a kind of low cost intervention that could easily be implemented. You know, how could we expand this? So next slide. So this is doing the same kind of project in South Africa. And I actually worked with folks from South Africa Partners and some university partners from Wits University in Johannesburg to do this project there, where we trained local folks to collect data about the engagement that was going on. And you can see some of the signs that were placed in the stores in South Africa. And in South Africa, it was interesting because we also had multiple languages going. So we used, I think, 3 of the top most used local languages in the Johannesburg area, and had signs up in those different languages. And we asked families which signs they would prefer, you know, which language did they prefer to have signs in. And it was a very interesting learning experience to see how this kind of project translated to a new context. And next slide. And finally, this project, well, it's kind of ongoing, or it was going before COVID-19 came on the scene. In last February, or end of January, we started doing a project with United for Brownsville in Brooklyn in 2 supermarkets. And this was alongside Jane's folks from Too Small to Fail. And myself and some of my research lab members, we trained some community members from Brownsville. So the members of the community, they collected all of the data, both observations, and they also surveyed folks to see, you know, how they, you know, experienced the signage. Also, we changed the evaluation based on what the folks in Brownsville wanted to get data on. They wanted to know more about healthy eating behavior, so we modified things to capture what they were most interested in. And we're hopeful that perhaps something will still be happening once COVID has abated a little bit, but this was a really exciting project with a lot of community input and community involvement. Next slide. So this is another project that is under our Playful Learning Landscapes umbrella. This is the Play and Learn Spaces project at the Free Library of Philadelphia. This project was funded by the William Penn Foundation, and we worked on this project as design consultants and evaluators. So we worked with the designers, Studio Ludo and Digsaw, who also reached out to the community members who visited these different libraries to ask, what do folks want in the children's section of the library? We heard that a lot of kids, you know, they go to the library. It's a place where they go after school. A lot of kids do homework there, but they've got a lot of energy. They got to let the energy out. So the libraries were transformed, and you can see some of the things that went into the libraries here. There's a climbing wall. There are these book nooks where you see a child reading there. But there are also tangram pieces that you can kind of fit like a puzzle into those spaces to have another activity to do. There's word walls. There's a stage where you can put on productions. So this was done in 3 different libraries. You can see they looked slightly different based on the feedback from the people who visit the library. So if you go to the next slide, you can see a different one. So you can see some of the similar types of installations, but it looks different, and it's different based on what the community input was for each location. And so we did evaluation on this project, and we found that you know, there were significant increases in the amounts and types of interaction and other things going on after these were installed in libraries versus before. And I think one of the most interesting things was, if you go to the next slide, I think is what yes. One of our more distal outcomes was library program attendance. So we were able to get information from the libraries about how many children were coming to any kind of programming that the libraries were hosting. And now these didn't necessarily have to do with the play and learn spaces, but they were happening in those libraries. So you can see the control library and how many were happening sort of pre-post installation. That library didn't get any installation, but you can see large increases in how many children were coming to the libraries with the play and learn installations. And we found this to be really encouraging, because it seemed like by having these new spaces, it was bringing more people to the library, even to events that didn't necessarily involve the spaces, but it was getting people excited to come out to the library. Next slide. So now I'm going to share a little bit about the project that Helen mentioned before about transforming the vacant lot and the bus stop. This is also in Philadelphia. It's a project called Urban Thinkscape, and we partnered with community organizations from the start to get this project off the ground. Our main community partners were the Belmont Alliance Civics Association, and also a local church who actually gave us usage of the land to put the installations on. So next slide. So this is what the lot looked like before Urban Thinkscape came into being. You can see it was a grassy spot. It's kind of a triangle shape. You can't really see it that well from this picture, but there is a bus stop on the far side of the lot. And the lot really, you know, it was kind of a green space. There's a sidewalk cutting through it, but not much was happening there. So if you click again, we'll see what it looked like when it was finished. So this is about the same view of the lot after Urban Thinkscape was installed. That far side is again where the bus stop is. We put in some more seating over there, and we've transformed the lot into a playful learning space. Next slide. So here's some images. The next couple slides are going to be images of what it looked like, and you can see the various installations that are part of Urban Thinkscape. So the one that the boy is jumping on is something called Stories, and the idea was about fostering literacy. Kids and caregivers can look at the icons, they have pictures on them, and the idea is that you can tell a story if you move between them. And there's a little bit of signage, but also, you know, kids and parents could just, if they're young, they can just identify what's in the image. We also know kids who come and play on it as like a play structure, which is also great, getting kids to come out. And then next slide. Here you can see Hidden Figures, the big metalwork piece. That one has images hidden in the metalwork.
Brenna, I'm going to share my screen. Just one quick second.
Okay.
We'll get this back up. There you go. Okay, there you go.
Yep, there it is. Next slide.
See, can you see that?
Oh wait, can you go back to the one with the hidden figures?
Let's see.
That one, yeah.
This one or the next? This
No,
one or the next one?
the one with the blue thing.
Yep, you're up.
Okay. So it has images hidden sort of within the metalwork, and you can look up and look at them, but they also, depending on the time of the day, the light shines through and they're shown in shadow on the ground. And the idea is that, naming and locating shapes and having discussions about kind of looking for things, what can you see in the hidden figures. And it's also one of the more intriguing pieces. So it really catches your attention if you're walking or driving down Lancaster Avenue. You can see this big thing and are like, whoa, what is that? Okay, you can go actually 2 slides ahead. So this is an installation called Jumping Feet, and you can see there's different patterns of footprints, and we have 2 different locations of this on the site. And the idea is that this kind of fosters some executive function skills. We have a little signage that says, like, what if you put 1 foot where there's 2 feet and 2 feet where there's 1 foot? So kind of like switching up the pattern, and you can play all kinds of games or other ways of doing this that challenge kids and make it fun for them. So let me go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is part of Puzzle Wall, which is another one of the installations. There's actually 4 different puzzles, and this is one of them. And so this one, you can actually, there's images that you match them, and it creates a larger picture out of the blue and white colors when you're finished. So it's pretty cool, and it, kids will come back and do it again because it is a bit more of a challenging puzzle. If you go to the next slide, I think it shows more of the puzzles. Yes. So this is the bus, what we did to the bus stop. We made it much more, we put in a lot more seating that you can see there. And then you can see 2 of the other puzzles. So working with our community group in Belmont, they actually chose the images for the puzzles. The lot where this is located is right on an intersection where Martin Luther King Jr. led a freedom march. And so there's a bust of him in the middle of the intersection. And then there's a mural of him on a building across the street. So they chose a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. And they chose a picture of one of the local congressmen who made a big difference in the area. And they chose a picture that says, it says the Lincoln Highway for Route 30, which is kind of what's running through the area. And then the big puzzle says Belmont, which is the name of the neighborhood. And it also has some like musical instruments. So you have to line it up so that it spells Belmont. But these are the installations that went in there. And if you go to the next slide, another way that we partner with the community on this particular project was something that we had heard when we initially started meeting with the community groups was, this is located in a promise zone area in West Philly. And a lot of the community members said, we don't see a lot of jobs coming in as a result of this initiative. A lot of research comes in, but, people aren't giving back to us. So there were several folks who were hired and trained. So they were hired by the project and trained to be our community data ambassadors. You can see 3 of them here. And, I met with them a lot. They learned about doing survey research, doing observations, and they collected all the data for the project. And we also partnered with Public Workshop. And Public Workshop runs various types of programs. One is Be a Building Hero, where they teach people, anyone who's interested, to come to their workshop and learn how to build things or, make things. And so they designed the Stories installation, and over 100 kids and other people from the neighborhood helped to build it. So you can see a picture here of some of the kids working on actually building that installation. Next slide. So this is just a brief graph, and in the resources, I think there's a published paper about this study that will be there that you can you can read and learn more about it. But this just shows at the so before Urban Thinkscape went in, what was it like versus a playground that's basically in the same neighborhood. You can see there was hardly any caregiver-child talk happening at the bus stop. And then if you look at the post after Urban Thinkscape, you see we had a lot more talk and interaction going on at the bus stop. And then of course at the playground, it's a little less because the time of year, but basically we were really encouraged to see how much more engagement was going on, just making the space more amenable to having kids have a place to play and, have a space to kind of run around and, engage with other kids or engage with their families. So transforming these spaces is just one way that we can kind of do that. Next slide. So as kind of a reflection about playful learning landscapes in general, we really aim to address educational, also physical activity and psychological needs of families today. Some lessons that we've learned. I can't say enough about the importance of city, community, and family partnerships. One of the big points of my work through this is that there is, these projects are a collaboration with the community from the very start. So thinking about like, what do community members want? What are they driving? Instead of imposing researcher goals and needs. When I work on these projects, I'm very committed to working and listening and partnering fully with community members. Also balancing design principles with opportunities for innovation by individual partners. This is something that we're experiencing a lot, and you can read some about this if you read the report that Helen mentioned before about scaling, because this is really, what design principles, like you heard some of them before, what do we have to keep the same to have similar effects? And what can we change based on the context of a new city or a new neighborhood, what people tell us they want? How do we balance between what we know is effective and also what the needs of a particular community are? And that's something that we've been working on a lot, is thinking about how we can make sure that individual communities are getting their needs met, at the same time trying to replicate positive effects that we found in the projects that we've already worked on.
Thank
I
you.
think that's it.
All right, good. Thank you so much. Before we go to Jane, I just want to thank Brenna for her comments. And also, I think you heard some themes that you're going to continue to hear, which is about the value of partnerships and the importance of putting the community at the center of what this looks and feels like, and how different and varied this kind of work can look in practice. And I'm really excited to continue this by turning it over to Jane Park-Wu, Director of Too Small to Fail. I've really enjoyed getting to know Jane in this and in other recent work we've been able to do together. Too Small to Fail, at Too Small to Fail, Jane leads the initiative's strategic partnerships with national nonprofit organizations, associations, and corporations. She has a really interesting background. I encourage you to read more about her in her bio. And she comes at this from media, from focusing on the 0 to 5 population, and just has a really interesting balance of experiences that she's able to bring to her role and to the important work of Too Small to Fail. So I'm going to turn it over to Jane. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Jill. Big thanks to everyone on the CGLR team for this incredible opportunity to participate in today's webinars, and also to my co-presenters. On behalf of all of us at Too Small to Fail and the Clinton Foundation, we're thrilled to participate in these events and these very important series of conversations, which I just think are so timely and important, especially in light of the increased challenges that children and families are facing today. We're so thankful for a long-standing partnership with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and of course, Ralph Smith, who's been an incredible advisor on Too Small to Fail's board. Next slide. I wanted to open up with a quick quote from one of my my heroes, Marian Wright Edelman, president of the Children's Defense Fund. And she says, education is for improving the lives of others and leaving your community and world better than you found it. I know everyone participating in today's event is doing just that through our individual and collective work. And our hope is that the information we're presenting here today can provide you with more ideas and inspiration on how we can improve the lives of children and families and the quality of the neighborhoods they're living in. Next slide. At Too Small to Fail, we've been working to address the kindergarten readiness gap that's leaving nearly 60% of children in the US unprepared, lagging behind in critical language and literacy skills. Next slide. We know that disparities in income create additional structural challenges for children and families. And research shows that on average, children from lower income families hear millions fewer words than their higher income counterparts. Recent research from Stanford University shows that these gaps and the number of words that children are exposed to appear as early as 18 months. So we share these findings to not only present the critical challenge we're facing, but also the opportunities we have during the first few years of life to build children's vocabulary and lay a strong foundation for learning. Next slide. We know through studies that both the amount and quality of language-rich engagement between children and their caregivers, like talking, reading, and singing during the earliest years are critical for building children's language and literacy skills. So we know that it's not just the number of words that children hear, but really the quality of the moments that are shared. Many that I just really enjoyed hearing at the beginning of our call, all these simple daily interactions around talking, reading, and singing that we know are just so important for all children to succeed. Next slide. So at Too Small to Fail, we've been focused on helping both families and communities make these moments happen more often. For families, we've been helping to make small moments big, and for communities, we're really transforming spaces to surround families with language and make everyday informal environments more conducive to meaningful learning opportunities for children and families. Next slide. We've been doing this work through our partners across the country. We've been working through 5,000 laundromats, through our partnership with the Laundry Cares Foundation, working through over 63,000 pediatricians, through our partnership with the American Academy of Pediatrics, over 500 playgrounds, through our work with playground manufacturing company Landscape Structures and Inclusion Matters by Shane's Inspiration. And we've distributed over 1 million children's books, launched over 29 community-wide campaigns nationally, and we also partner with media and tech companies like Spotify, Univision, and others like Bright by Text to really amplify our messages among diverse families across the country. Next slide. This is a quick snapshot of our incredible partners, ranging from nonprofits, trade associations, corporations, and local and national organizations serving diverse families. We're a fairly small team here at Too Small to Fail, and while we joke that we're literally too small to fail, it's really through our incredible partners who have worked with us to really champion our mission and reach families far and wide on a national scale. Next slide. As both Helen and Brenna referenced earlier, we know that children under 5 spend the majority of their time outside of school or childcare settings. And as we discussed this before, probably much more time than 80% in a COVID world. So consequently, everyday spaces that children and families frequent, like the playground, the grocery store, the local laundromat, the place of worship, the hospital, or the local clinic, all these places have just enormous potential to serve as informal learning environments. So Too Small to Fail, with our partners, we've been meeting families where they are in these everyday spaces, and this has been a key strategy in promoting children's early brain and language development. Next slide. This is just another snapshot of the various spaces where we've been working. As I mentioned earlier, we've launched about 30 local community campaigns in cities across the country to really weave our messages into the fabric of neighborhoods. And these communities have also been perfect ways for us to test new approaches to early literacy promotion, really with the goal of examining opportunities to scale. And just echoing my co-presenters from earlier, many of the strategies that are developed in each of these communities are developed by the community members in partnership with the families and local organizations, many of whom I know are on this webinar today. So big hello to everyone and all of our campaign partners across the country joining today. Next slide. One of the key ways we've been surrounding families with language is through creative materials. We developed originally with an ad agency called Goodby Silverstein and Partners. They're the ad agency that developed the Got Milk campaign. And these are Talking is Teaching Let's Talk posters focused on a variety of child-friendly topics that just give parents ideas on ways they can engage in language-rich interactions with their children, whether it's on the bus, at the grocery store, while waiting in a hospital, or on the playground. We have an extensive line of these creative materials in English, Spanish, and other languages upon request. And these can be implemented in a variety of settings, which I'll show in later slides. We also have Let's Rhyme and Let's Sing creative, referencing lyrics to simple songs and nursery rhymes. And again, these are available in English, Spanish, and other languages as well. We also developed new social emotional development themed posters. These were developed specifically for waiting areas of family courts. So you'll see some of these displayed in family courts in Milwaukee. And we partner with the National Council for Juvenile and Family Court Judges to distribute these through family courts, but Too Small to Fail is also making these available to all of our local and national partners across the country. Next slide. These are just other posters we've developed. Next slide. We also want to share some visuals of how we've integrated our creative materials in other spaces throughout the community. This is signage we have posted through public housing areas, encouraging families to talk about cars or playing I Spy, looking for things that they can see in their surrounding neighborhood. So really just kind of weaving in fun, language-rich interactions as they're walking together outside. Next slide. We're so excited about these. These are brand new story trails that we developed with our publishing partners as well as with our playground partner, Landscape Structures. These are story trails featuring pages of books on high quality weather resistant panels. And this could really go be installed in any outdoor environment, pathways, courtyards. And we're working with our publishing companies to create a catalog of books to present on these panels. So we'd love to work with communities represented here in this webinar and other JLR communities to really bring stories to life in neighborhoods all across the country. Next slide. Here are just some more snapshots of our story trails. Next slide. So in light of COVID, we can go to the next slide. We really had to reimagine our spaces strategy. Amber from Chicago, I saw your comment about really having to rethink some of the spaces, the work that we've done. And in light of social distancing recommendations, we have had to pause some of our work because we can't be recommending interactions indoors at this moment. But what we realized was that some of the spaces that we were working in, like the laundromat, the diaper bank, food banks, grocery stores, were really more important than ever to engage families through these spaces, providing essential services. We also gave a lot of thought to where are these in-between spaces where families are congregating. And I know it could be different community by community, but if we all think about kind of where children and families are, where they're spending time outside, whether it's kind of going for bike rides, the pathways, and really transforming these in-between spaces into literacy-rich environments. These are just a couple examples on how we've been doing them, accomplishing that goal. So we've been working with a great group called Sidewalk Math to integrate these math patterns that children can use to jump and skip and count, along with the story trails, which I shared about earlier. So these are, this is just a visual of a new story trail that we'll be integrating in the community soon. We also developed a Talking is Teaching Talk Reads and Indoor Activities Kit, focused on tips and activities that parents can use to engage their children in learning activities while indoors. And this is available on our website, talkingisteaching.org/indoors, to download. And we've also been working with our publishing partners to distribute to date 56,000 children's books through places where we know families are going for essential services, including food banks, laundromats, and other places to pair basic needs items with early literacy resources. Next slide. I want to share a little bit about our exciting partnership with laundromats. Many of you may have read about this work before, but over the past several years, we've been working closely with the Laundry Cares Foundation, and we're honored that Liz McChesney, their Director of Community Development, is here on this webinar with us today. And we've partnered with them to create literacy-rich spaces in laundromats across the country. We've also worked with them to host over 60 free laundry and literacy days. And we're also working on building a coalition of early childhood organizations and leaders from the laundromat industry to create literacy-rich spaces in laundromats across the country. So I want to just share a little bit about what these spaces look like. Next slide. This is one of our first laundromats that we worked in through a pilot evaluation, generously supported by the Packard Foundation. This is a laundromat in Brooklyn, and here's the after. That was the before, and here's the after. And again, all of these components and items were developed in partnership with families, communities, and kids. And when we ask questions like, you know, what kind of things would you like to see? How could we make this laundromat so much more fun and playful? And this is just one of our first transformations. Next slide. This is a typical kind of corner that you might see in a laundromat. This is one that we worked with in Chicago. And here's the after. And then here's another before photo of a laundromat in Queens, New York. This is a before. This is kind of typically what we might see. And then here's an after. So we've been really thrilled to receive support to be able to conduct a pilot evaluation of these spaces, where we found that children were engaging in about 30 times more literacy activities in laundromats with our family read, play, and learn spaces compared to laundromats without. We also found that when we bring in a trusted messenger like a librarian to lead regular story times, to model literacy-rich activities for children and families, the effects were even greater. And children were observed engaging in about 47 minutes of sustained literacy activities, which we all know for a young child, that is quite a long time. We're constantly iterating on our work with laundromats. I just want to also acknowledge the generous support of the William Penn Foundation for their support to be able to launch another evaluation to improve honor spaces and creating new and innovative ways to create these playful literacy-rich spaces in laundromats across Philadelphia in partnership with Kaboom. So our laundromat work has really inspired other spaces where we've integrated these spaces in WIC clinic waiting rooms, family court waiting rooms, and we're also exploring a partnership with California Social Services. These are just snapshots of some of our playgrounds across the country. We integrate these creative panels in over 500 playgrounds nationally through landscape structures. And again, these are just some of our creative prompts and open-ended questions that we feature through playgrounds. So if we can go to the next slide, just some more visuals. Next slide. So we have questions like, let's count the steps, or my favorite part of the train is, and just offers opportunities and ideas for ways parents can engage with their children in conversations during playtime. These are panels at a local Head Start Center in Mississippi. This is a playground in Tulsa, where we kind of line the perimeter of the playground with these colorful, bright, and engaging prompts. Next slide. These are new This is new playground equipment we developed also with Landscape Structures. This is called the Nook, and they're specifically for 6 to 24-month-olds. And so all around there are opportunities for conversation, and children can climb in and out of the little house. Again, all of them kind of feature, every corner has conversation prompts to give parents ideas on ways they can engage their children in conversations during free time. Brenna showed some of these visuals before, but we were thrilled to partner with Playful Learning Landscapes on a grocery store learning adventure with Andy the Apple, hosting a scavenger hunt throughout the grocery store. So this is another example of how we've worked with grocery stores to turn them into literacy-rich environments. These are signs that these are the Let's Sing Together signs. I just wanted to show this visual of how we can integrate learning just through all these simple daily activities. So there's a diaper changing station. And one story I love about this work is that there was a local library that integrated these Let's Sing posters above the changing station. And the librarian said her bathroom was connected to the vent of her office. And she said, as soon as she put some of these lyrics up, she can actually hear singing coming through the vent, and parents actually singing more with their babies. And so as we think about all these different opportunities, I think the diaper changing station is another place where we can be integrating some of these moments to help families turn diaper time into sing time. Here's some of our bus shelter signage. Parents can play I Spy as they're waiting for the bus. And integrating our creative through billboards. I just want to end with 3 calls to action. The first is, as reflected in some of the visuals and inspirations that we shared earlier. The first is to really promote a culture of literacy in everyday spaces by surrounding children and families with early language and learning opportunities. The second is to use informal environments as hubs to create greater access to early learning resources like books and other print-rich materials. And the third, as we learn from our work with laundromats and librarians and other childcare providers, the importance of exploring community partnerships to collaborate with local organizations, libraries, and civic groups that can serve as trusted messengers for children and families. And I'll just bookend this presentation with another quote by Marian Wright Edelman, where she says, "The future which we hold and trust for our own children will be shaped by our fairness to other people's children." So thank you so much for this opportunity. We would love to hear from you and partner with many of you to create more literacy-rich spaces in communities across the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. It's great to have you be able to show everyone the great work that Too Small to Fail is doing. And I think hopefully those on the line will see the intersection between Too Small to Fail, Playful Learning Landscapes, the Brookings Institution, and how they're all kind of looking at the same issue in similar, but also in different ways. And I think that hopefully we'll be able to align with the diversity of those we have on the line too, and the way in which you might be looking at this issue and how it might best apply to the work you're doing and in the communities in which you're in. So really want to thank all 3 of our discussants. We are now going to open it up to some questions. And so I think we're going to alternate. I've been watching the the numbers tick up on the Q&A. So we have some great questions in our Q&A box. We also have some folks on the line that, or at least one person on the line that we'd love to be able to start off our Q&A. So Liz McChesney, you heard Jane call her out earlier and give her a high five as she was presenting. We're gonna unmute you and we're gonna see if you can ask our first question to the group.
Sure, thank you, Jill, and thank you, Helen, Brenna, and Jane. Oh my gosh, what an inspiring presentation today. I get to work with Jane now, but I really come to this work from a decades-long career as a children's librarian and as a public library administrator. And now we're seeing that public libraries and schools are closed or restricted in what they can do. How do you all see that traditional institutions like libraries can leverage our experience and our skill sets to continue to support learning through other kinds of spaces and places like the ones you've all called out?
And whoever wants to take the first shot at that, please do. And I think you guys are on mute, so you may want to unmute.
So I'll comment quickly. That's a great question. Thinking about things now, interactions particularly between adults and children are just different now, or between kids themselves. And so I think one thing that came up in some recent interviews that I've been doing for a Brookings policy brief on playful learning in cities is that it really. We're really rethinking about how we do all of our daily activities. Like restaurants are now having tables outside. And so libraries have this really, I think, great connection with the community and knowing sort of what the community, what their community needs and how they could continue to foster really quality child caregiver interactions. And so maybe having the libraries be like a real resource for families, the connection point, because now schools, it's hard for schools, I think, now to be connecting with families, parents, and children. And so having the libraries even just be that really key connection point for the communities, a trusted resource for maybe where to go for different ideas for how they can provide learning opportunities for children. And then there was another question that came up in the Q&A box about this challenge of creating the important link between play and learning. So again, the libraries being this trusted resource for really highlighting that. And in this time of being very uncertain about how school is going to look, highlighting the benefits of playful learning for children.
Brendan, you want to add something? Yeah, go ahead.
I will just speak a little from experience. So I have a 6-year-old child, and during this whole COVID crisis, my local library, I live in New Jersey, and my local library, actually, I got several text messages from actual human beings who work at the library, who checked in. I mean, we had books checked out, from before, and just checking in with us, just seeing how we were doing. They sent us, they gave us links to a website with like different resources for kids and families who are looking for activities to do, basically saying like, we know that you often come to library events, you register and come to events. Here are some things you might do at home that could be kind of like what we do at the library. Like you attended a nature program. This is something you could do. I actually was kind of blown away by that. Just that getting a reach out. Something we've thought about with Playful Learning Landscapes is how can we enhance the home environment? How can we support parents and provide resources or other things? So like one thing we started doing was on Twitter with our Playful Learning Landscapes at the handle for that. And then also with the hashtag Play in the Pandemic, we started a conversation going about what does play look like in this time and how is it different, and how can you, social distance and things like that, but still have, engaging play experiences while understanding you know, it's tough for everybody, you know, parents, I mean, speaking as a parent who also works, it's been really tough. But at the same time, I've really appreciated some of these resources that came from my, you know, my local county library system. And then how we as, you know, Playful Learning Landscapes Initiative can also be a resource, you know, and helping to provide things for, you know, that parents can access in, you know, in a crunch.
If I can just add, just to echo what Helen and Brenna was saying, you know, Liz just learned a tremendous amount just from working with you, and I think the work that librarians have been doing, librarians are expert at meeting families where they are, and going beyond the walls of the library to meet the current critical needs of families, whether it's through books, literacy, or other connecting with other resources. So I just, I think especially in this time, I know we're looking very closely at libraries to provide expertise on kind of where families are and pairing basic needs items with books and other literacy resources. But I think, Brenna, similar to you, I've also been blown away just by reading and hearing, whether it's through Facebook or Instagram or through Google Alerts, just learning about all the innovative ways that libraries are reaching families right now, whether they're, you know, through drive-through, you know, as families are driving through to access food. Just been really inspiring, and I think that there's a lot we as the early childhood literacy community can learn from the work of librarians.
Yeah, thank you, Liz, for your question. Thanks to all three of you for your responses. I was looking through, so let me say a couple of things. One is all of those on the line. We're going to have a quick question for you in a minute that we'd love to get you to respond to in the chat. So be ready for that. But before we put that up, I was looking through the Q&A, and there seems like there's kind of two categories. One, a very practical, like how does this get maintained? You know, who does the maintenance? How are you ensure it stays how do the installations stay fresh, and how do you actually implement the work, right? And then there's some other questions about kind of funding and like, how do I get started? So I kind of want to just take the second one and ask kind of a broader question, which some of the chats had to do, or some of the questions had to do with funding, but I think there's kind of a broader question to be asked about what are the kind of ingredients that you really need to successfully advance this work. So funding is one, but are there other kind of ingredients that you think people on the line should be thinking about if they want to do something like this themselves in their communities? Or do you have any like quick tips or suggestions for those to how to like actually bring the right ingredients together to make something like this work in their community?
So I can comment quickly again. My colleague Jennifer Vey and I, Jennifer is the director of the Bass Center at Brookings, have been doing some interviews with city leaders. Also included an interview with Jane and Patty from Too Small to Fail, thinking about a lot about how the public sector can help support these initiatives, Playful Learning Landscapes and similar initiatives, bringing education to the public realm. And one piece that has come, it's related to funding, but it's really building the public will in the public sector, whether that's through the mayor's office or it just works very differently in different cities. Some cities, larger cities like San Francisco and Seattle, I think Milwaukee came up as one, are lucky enough to have either a person or an actual office of early childhood, education or development. So there's that's sort of the ideal scenario, because then you have one sort of place that, or it's that person or that office that then can be the touch point for Parks and Rec and Department of Transportation and Public Works. Yeah. So we're hearing that it's a very, getting the permitting is difficult and all the logistics around it can be very difficult. So if you have that sort of centralized point person, that's really helpful. And then related to that, obviously, like, having a mayor or someone in the mayor's office is very supportive of these initiatives. I think that's what you've seen in Philadelphia for a large part, and other cities that have sort of the city leaders that either have a professional and or personal sort of stake in this, and they're helping to push it forward, because we're just hearing this is sort of something new, right? Having these education sort of focused installations or activities in public spaces, there's no path forward or no like paved path forward for a lot of them.
Mm.
So you're having to make your own path. So that's just
Yeah.
sort of, having the public, public sector support is incredibly important.
Well, and I think, as you've all seen, right, how interdisciplinary this is, I think that also plays out in the public sector too, right? Like you need different departments probably coming together or working together in different ways. And I think a path forward is a good metaphor. It's an apt metaphor for the work that we're trying to do here. All right, I want to try to do this little activity. So please get near your chat box, and you can go to the next slide. So we are going to ask all of you to respond to this question. One of the Q&A questions had to do with, what about rural areas? How does this align with rural areas? And we actually talked about that in our prep for this discussion. And it led to this question, which is that even though much of the examples are more urban in nature, how you look at community, how you look at place and space transcends whether you're urban or rural or where you are, right? And so it could look different in each kind of place. So it actually led to this question, which is, what kinds of informal places are there in your community that could be transformed into spaces that support early child development and growth? So we want to give you a chance, take a few seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, list where you're from, and list the place in your community that comes to mind. And just really briefly, why that place or space is a good candidate for this kind of transformation. So our Helen, Jane, and Brenna and myself, we're all going to look at the chat responses, and then I'm going to ask first Jane, then Brenna, and then Helen to just share some quick comments on what they're reading. This is great. Thank you all for writing. We're getting some good responses very quickly. Keep it up. All right. So discussants, get ready for me to turn to you.
Gardens are great.
Yeah, Jane, what's sticking out for you that you see here?
Well, there's so many spaces here that I think this is one of the reasons why I was so excited for this question, because there's so many different spaces depending on the type of neighborhood, rural or urban, mobile trailer parks, apartment complexes, walking trails, waterfront areas. It seems to me most of these are kind of, ideas for outdoor environments, which is particularly relevant now. Ball fields, all places that are allowing for social distancing, which is
yeah, Brenna, what about on your side? What pops out for
you? And of course, we've all four of us have talked about this before with housing. But yes, the idea of incorporating these ideas into housing developments, particularly like low-income housing, and then other housing also. I do want to say also, some of us from Playful Learning Landscapes are also, well, of course, it got interrupted by COVID, but we are planning to kind of revamp waiting room, pediatric waiting room, to put in some installations and then look at that as well. So really interested in these spaces. A lot of people are saying about spaces where people wait, where kids wait. And we really are trying to target those. And you heard from Jane a lot of what they're trying to do to target those spaces, like laundromats and stuff also.
Yep.
Just
Helen,
a fun one.
Go ahead. No, Jane, and then Helen, yeah.
I saw dog parks here. We do have creative. Let's talk about dogs if anyone is interested.
Helen, what pops out for you?
I see a lot about transportation. So subway, but I mean bus stops have been, as Brenna talked about, and Jane too, about some different modes of transportation. I mean, hopefully someday we are going to be going places more. So airports is a big one. Subways, train stations, bus stops. That seems to be a big theme here. And yeah, it is. In normal times, families spend a lot of time waiting, to get somewhere. So I think that's a great one too.
I'm just struck by nature paths, splash parks, water, like a few people said waterfront, areas on the waterfront. I, I like car repair shops, mobile phone stores, right? Like all places where kids have to wait, right? Or where they're there and how they could be transformed. Those are the ones that kind of struck me that I hadn't thought about before.
And if anyone has spent time waiting in the DMV,
do any of you do anything in the DMV?
You know, we haven't, but we've been interested in it, just because it is definitely a place with many opportunities for improvement. But it's
Play areas at restaurants. Yeah, these are great. These are great. Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
Also want to note that, you know, what we've been discussing is that these are terrific ideas that are coming and that I think are being inspired right now in a COVID world, that can continue to benefit children, just because they're spending time in all of these spaces and will continue to.
Thank you all so much for weighing in on this. And what the beauty of this is we actually can save this chat so we can look at all these responses and group them and let's see what kind of big themes come up. And I think you've probably given Helen and Jane and Brenna some good ideas too for how they could be thinking about their work differently through this kind of question. So we're going to put up a closing poll to get your thoughts on this discussion and how this went. I want to give a chance for our discussants to share any last quick takeaways or last thoughts they'd really like to have you all leave with in the few minutes we have left. So I'm going to start with Jane and then go to Brenna and end with Helen. So Jane, if you can share any last quick thoughts, takeaways you would want to say before we close out.
Well, I just want to thank you, Jill, for being our wonderful moderator, again to GLR and presenters for this wonderful opportunity. I think this just highlights an incredible opportunity for all of us to explore cross-sector partnerships. And it's not just up to the teachers and the librarians and early childhood professionals, but for everybody, whether it's government, the business community. And I think what we shared here today hopefully is an example of how some of the beautiful things that can happen when different groups come together. And Jill, your metaphor of kind of the ingredients, you know, we're trying new ingredients right now as we cook together. And so I think, you know, bringing together unusual ingredients, and as Ralph likes to say, unlikely bedfellows. I think there's a lot of creative and inspiring opportunities during this time.
Thank you, Jane. Brenna.
Yes, so I think I just have felt really energized by this conversation, and thanks to Jill and Helen and Jane as well for having this conversation. And I think this discussion about what we do in the time of COVID-19 and how it relates to this work that we've all been doing is something that's really challenging, but also can be, I think, a really interesting space for innovation. And as others have said, you know, it's providing us with a context that, you know, we've kind of been forced into, but how do we change our focus, and how do we, you know, adapt to this situation? And that's something that I know Playful Learning Landscapes has really been trying to think about. And I hope that, you know, we're able to move on this going forward. But I think that, you know, in general, I think what all of us have kind of spoke towards today is this importance of engaging with community members, engaging with your audience, you know, who is going to be using installations, who is going to be participating, making sure that they are a voice and present at the table from the very beginning, in my mind, is absolutely critical. So I think that's a huge takeaway that I have from seeing, you know, Jane's work, and also just sharing with you all about Playful Learning Landscapes as well.
Thank you so much. And Helen.
Yes, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I repeat things that Jane and Brenna just said. My connection was bad, so I heard probably only 50% of what they said. Okay. But yeah, just to echo that, this conversation has really sort of inspired me about this work, and that in this time, you know, this pandemic is so tragic in so many ways, but amid this crisis, to see the opportunities for one, thinking about elevating this link between play and learning, and knowing that now more than ever, children need play, not only for the learning component, but they just need it for their well-being, right? And to be happy and to have something good in their lives. And then also thinking often, which is seen as a dichotomy, but I wish it wouldn't be, the informal and formal learning, right? Like we know that kids need, you know, the school environment, whatever that looks like these days, to learn, but also, you know, informal spaces, and then in our case, talking about public spaces and just spaces where families are gathering and still able to gather safely and meeting, and to use those as opportunities for learning, because right now, you know, the kids need everything they can get, and anywhere they can get it, so wherever they're spending their time, and in these, even in these little moments, like, you know, it could be just a couple minutes, like those high quality, even if they're short interactions, are so super important, especially right now. And so just to think about where those could be, and again, it's great that you know, everyone listed so many different, you know, places, many of them that I think we have thought about before and just haven't moved on yet, but many that we haven't thought about. So it's great to have this group thinking about how to move this forward.
Thank you. If you can just pull up we just have a couple quick slides to close out, but I just want to thank again, Helen, Brenna, and Jane. This is a top-notch group that's here. And I learned a lot from all three of you. I learned a lot from the 200 plus people on the line and what you shared with us. And there's just nothing better than seeing a child learn. And I think what you got to see here is a window into different ways that you can really help kids learn, all of you, wherever you are. And I hope we inspired you in some way to be able to do that and think about that a little bit differently. Just want to say that we have GLR Learning Tuesdays every Tuesday, 3 o'clock Eastern. Please join us for future conversations. You can see what's coming up, and we encourage you to sign up. There were a couple questions about the slides. All the slides will be sent out along with many other resources. And then our panelists will do our best to try to answer the rest of the questions we couldn't get to. So I'll work with them offline to try to get some answers in place for those, and we'll send those out as well. You can go to the next slide. And with that, we want to thank all of you. Have fun, stay healthy and safe. We look forward to seeing you in future Learning Tuesdays. Thank you again to our three wonderful panelists, and we hope to see you all very soon. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.